When we first meet someone, we generally follow an unspoken script for how to do greetings. For many of us, this is the handshake. We're calling this the first handshake because we're going to cover 3 types of handshake here. Think about this first handshake. How was it for them? Why did they shake hands? How did they know what to do? What makes a great handshake? Sometimes this approach is fine. Often it's not particularly memorable. Sometimes it's pretty non-consensual, and that's no fun at all. How could we do it differently? This is where the second handshake comes in.
That wasn't brilliant, was it? Do you want to try making it better?
Maybe we could talk about what we want.
I noticed I kind of grabbed your hand. Shall we try for something more mutual?
I'd like that. Also, I like a firm handshake. Oh, but maybe not that firm.
Sure.
How long should we shake for?
Like, up and down 3 times?
How would you feel about the second handshake? What would you like about it? What would you find off-putting? How did it compare to the first handshake? Some people prefer the second handshake because they know what's going to happen and can meet each other's needs. Others prefer the first handshake because they like not knowing what's going to happen, and that feels more spontaneous. The third handshake approach combines the best of the first and second handshakes. It tries to be a bit more spontaneous like the first handshake, but also to include some sense of checking in with each other like the second handshake, often with an emphasis on ongoing verbal and non-verbal communication.
Shall we?
This is good.
Yeah.
How would you feel about the third handshake? What would you like about it? What would you find off-putting? How did it compare to the other handshakes?
I like that one because we knew what was happening.
Yeah, we were both trying to make it good for each other.
This time she could tell I didn't want to do a handshake.
It felt better not to be forcing a handshake on someone.
Whether you're more of a first handshake or second handshake type person, to be consensual, you need to be third handshake in terms of tuning into yourself and the other person. You've probably worked out that handshakes here are an analogy, although actually everything we've said is quite useful to apply to handshakes too. Like handshakes, sex has an unspoken script too. Some people enjoy sex that's like the first handshake. Others find it doesn't do it for them at all. It's easy to be non-consensual if you assume the other person wants to follow the script. The script is so powerful that if we're not following it, we often feel we're not having proper sex. The second handshake approach to sex can sound like a good alternative, but in reality many people struggle to do it. It's good you found out each other's needs and set boundaries beforehand. There's less likely to be any unpleasant surprises. But talking about sex in such detail can feel awkward and less spontaneous. The third handshake is perhaps a more realistic model for how we might have more consensual sex. Consent is ongoing throughout the encounter. It's about paying attention to the non-verbal and verbal cues and noticing all of the different sensations and sounds going on to tell you whether it's enjoyable for you and the other person or people involved. By paying attention to the person or people we're with, we're paying less attention to what we think we should be doing, and we might feel more able to do what we enjoy. This includes all the diverse sexual practices people can do. With the third handshake approach, it's important to be aware of the inevitable power imbalances between the people involved. These can make it harder for people to feel that they can be open about what they want and don't want.
As a black guy, people often assume you'll always be up for sex. It makes it hard to say when you're not in the mood.
As a young woman, I often worry about being called a slut if I talk about what I enjoy sexually.
I often feel like I should have regular sex with my partner to keep the relationship going.
I feel like I fancy my partner more than they fancy me, which can make sex difficult to negotiate. The only models we've been given for consent are the first handshake model of not talking about it and just assuming everything's consensual, or the second handshake model of talking about everything before we do it as if that's easy to do. Hopefully now you can see there's a middle way between these two approaches. A third handshake way, which enables sex to be more consensual, more tuned in, and hopefully more enjoyable.